Welcome to the Sustainability Side, where we explore the topics, ideas, innovations, and people shaping more sustainable future. We all have heard the magic word net zero. We're gonna discuss about it. We will be tackling one of the most talked and understood, no, misunderstood topic or a concept. Yes, I'm again talking about net zero. So governments have pledged in it, right? And corporates are announcing it. It's like a biggest next buzzword having around in our spaces. So investors are demanding it, but behind the headlines lies a critical question. Are these organizations truly reducing emissions, or are they simply just chasing the targets they can't fully understand? So to discuss this topic, we are joining today with Ms. Sriranjani Srinivasan, soon to be a Dr. Sriranjani Srinivasan. She's a sustainability professional, an architect, an educator, and a climate action advocate with more than 15 years of experience in sustainability, design, green buildings, and of course, we are again talking about carbon management, ESG, and net zero implementation. So, before joining and going to the session today, let's have a small intro.
Sing it loud, let's unite on the sustainability side. Feel the love day and night. Let's turn the tides, make a change today. Together we define our sustainable way. With every step we take, we rise and glow on the sustainability side.
Welcome back. As a sustainability consultant and a carbon technical lead, she has helped organizations move from ambition to action. So, in this episode, we will be encoding or decoding what a net zero actually means, uncover the mistakes organizations often make, and explore how businesses can build climate strategies that are credible, measurable, and future ready. So, I welcome you, Ms. Sri Ranjani, to the sustainability side.
Like you rightly said, net zero has become one of the most widely used terms in sustainability today. But it's also one of the most easily misunderstood terms or concepts, we can say. In simple terms, it's reduced as much as technically and economically feasible, and then balancing any residual emissions through the credible removals or compensation mechanisms that's available today. Right now, the key word here is to understand the term residual. Many people hear the word net in the term net zero and assume it's an accounting exercise that you can continue emitting and simply offset everything. But that was never the intent when we talk about net zero, right? Now, I often use a health analogy when we talk about net zero. Now, if a doctor tells you that your cholesterol is dangerously high, the solution is not to keep eating unhealthy food and take more medication, right? The first recommendation is usually lifestyle changes and better diet and things like that, which again gets supported with medication. So it's something very similar to that when we talk about net zero principles as well. So the primary objective is to transform how the business operates itself or the organization operates itself. You need to look at things like how they consume energy, how much of energy gets used, the manufacturing process by itself, and things like this. And ultimately, offsetting comes later after all of these processes are taken care of. So the misunderstanding largely comes from the fact that many organizations have communicated net zero as a target date rather than the a transformative journey. Now, one thing I'll also tell you here is a lot of times net zero is considered like just another environmental initiative or a sustainability effort. But it's basically where you need to transform your entire operations of the business itself. And that's one of the biggest reasons why there's a misunderstanding that happens.
Some foods don't just fill you, they heal you. Ancient grains, timeless nutrition, crafted for today. From heritage rice, noodles to wholesome flakes and pasta, every grain is a step towards better health. Because wellness isn't a trend, it's a way of life. Nelligum. Eat like your roots intended.
That's something new for me, because I thought it's just some other theory. I was totally not expecting this. But yeah, when I think about it, I totally agree with you. So, from your experience, what are the biggest mistakes that usually a big organizations or even all the organizations that make while developing this net zero strategies? Where are we going wrong?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is treating net zero, like I said, as just another initiative rather than a transformation strategy for the business itself. Now, many organizations, they start by asking, how do we become net zero, when they should first actually ask the question of, where are our emissions actually coming from, right? Without understanding your emissions profile of the organization, you're essentially trying to solve a problem that you've not defined at all, and that's where the entire issue issue lies. And the second mistake is, focusing only on the operational emissions, meaning organizations look at it only from the lens of electricity, the fuels they consume, and then with respect to only the facilities that they are occupying. But the larger picture is in their scope 3, which is basically the supply chain associated emissions. And there have been studies that clearly showcase that almost 90% of an organization's emissions comes from their supply chain, which is their scope 3. And now, in many sectors, especially the construction sector, the manufacturing sector, or even if we look at retail and consumer goods, like I said, about 70 to 90% of the total footprint of their emissions comes from scope 3. And yet, we have organizations that often spend most of their time discussing only the first 10 or the third 10 to the 30%, which is your scope 1 and 2. Now, the third mistake that I've also seen that happens, is setting long-term targets without short-term or mid-term action plans being strategized and thought about. Now, it's relatively easy to announce a net zero target for, say, maybe the year 2040 or 2050. But the real challenge is identifying what needs to happen in the next 12 months or within the next 3 years, next 5 years. So it's very critical to have stages or steps that that organizations will have to take to get to that final goal of net zero. So the organizations making the most progress, that I have seen, are the ones that translate the ambitious targets into practical annual actions, which can ultimately lead them to that net zero goal.
Okay, just to understand in a very natural way, if a business or any organizations who are entering into this net zero thing, and I would say the net zero doesn't belong only to the big corporates. It belongs to even the small scale businesses, if I'm not wrong. And you have
Right.
also mentioned mostly it comes from the supply chain where no one even imagined where we are generating it from. So how
Yeah.
to find this and how to control it? Is it controllable? Is it auditable?
So I think that's a very interesting question, because net zero is not something that's like an all new thought process and all of that, right? It's something that you and I can be a part of, that every individual is a part of. There are actions that each of us can take and help organizations get to net zero. And when we talk about smaller organization, which is part of the supply chain for the bigger ones, the smaller organizations, the scope 1 and 2 is ultimately what contributes to the scope 3 of the larger organizations itself. So it's going to be very critical that they are able to track data, and tracking data is not very difficult in today's context, because you have various tools that's available for you to be able to quantify your emissions and track your data accordingly. And that assessment, understanding your footprint, your emissions footprint at your stage, at your organization's level, is going to be very, very critical. So you can start with that, based on which your scope 1, and this way it helps the larger organizations also understand their entirety of emissions footprint itself. About reduction, once you've assessed yourself, once you know where you're standing in terms of your emissions footprint, then it becomes a matter of time before you can strategize to understand how you're going to reduce it. So the first critical step is always about measurement or the assessment.
Now, when we talk about businesses, organizations, the next thing that comes in our mind is greenwashing, right? Because we do think we have entered in an era where greenwashing is being replaced by accountability. And why do you think that is happening, and how can we stop that?
I think the short answer to your question is yes. I think we are witnessing a very significant shift, where accountability is replacing greenwashing. Meaning to say, a decade ago, sustainability was largely a very reputation driven concept, right? Today, it's increasingly becoming evidence driven. So, stakeholders are no longer satisfied with broad statements such as, we care about the environment, or we are carbon neutral and things like that. Stakeholders and investors today are, they want to know exactly how is the organization performing in terms of its emissions, meaning how were the emissions measured. They like to understand which were the scope emissions that was included, not included, what is the reduction that has actually happened over time, things like this. So we're moving from a point in the world today where we're moving from claims to actual proof. Now what's driving this change is a combination of various things. It could be a combination of investors pressure, regulatory developments, international disclosure standards, and also, of course, growing public awareness. Now, if you look at it,
Mm.
I can often, I can compare this with the financial reporting. Companies cannot simply
Mm.
say, trust us, we are profitable, right? They must provide audited financial statements. Organizations have their financial statements, the audited financial statements that come out every year. Similarly, climate performance is also beginning to move in the same direction. Organizations are increasingly required to be transparent and provide independently verified sustainability claims that are to be published. So that's a very healthy development because it rewards genuine action rather than just looking at tall claims that's being made by organizations.
I still have, questions regarding this greenwashing, because now the greenwashing has more likely has become a thing for marketing. It
Hmm.
has become an attractive term rather than taking an accountability. That's what I believe in. So, to the people who are watching, to the listeners, if any company or any organization they're doing this greenwashing, how do we find this out? Is there any simple way so that people think rather than fall for the trap?
So I think the first thing we need to understand here is greenwashing is you identify something as greenwashing only when you're not able to trace back all of the data associated with that claim, right? So for instance, like I said, if an organization is going to come forth and say we are carbon neutral, then it's also the responsibility of the organization to provide accountable data that showcases that they are carbon neutral. Now, unless and until that
Hmm.
data is transparently made available stakeholders, to the public, to anybody for that matter who wants to understand, that's when you can think it's probably greenwashing. Now greenwashing is something that it's a very tall claim that we cannot to just say it, but it needs to be, again, it's verified based on the fact that you don't have transparent data made available to back all of the commitments that you are saying or the statements that an organization is saying, basically. Now for
Hmm.
instance, you go to the supermarket, you have so many products that's available today. I recently came across a product. I purchased one which said the plastic that's being used in that for that particular container is 50% less plastic. But that was just a claim that was given in that particular container. I was not able to exactly trace
Hmm.
back to see how was this quantified, on what basis was it done. I'm not saying it's greenwashing, but what I'm trying to say here is you need to provide accountability and traceability and transparently showcase the fact that this is really that 50% reduced level of plastic in that container. Unless and until that is showcased to
Yes.
people, it would ideally be considered greenwashing by everybody else. So unless and until they showcase those numbers, they showcase the methodology associated with that, there is transparency on and accountability on those claims, people are going to be misunderstanding that to be greenwashing.
That's true. I totally agree with you. So, those who are watching us, listening us, I would say be aware. You know what you're purchasing, you know what you're getting into it. Ask the questions, because petitions are made for a reason. When we ask, things get revealed, right? So, I would say let's start asking the questions. So, continuing that, many companies focus heavily on the carbon offsets. Where do this affect, offset fits within this credible net zero journey?
Okay. I think what I can tell you here is offsets absolutely have a role to play in the net zero journey. Because when I'm talking about strategizing to get to net zero, when an organization has to strategize to get to net zero, right? The first thing you look at is avoiding emissions. Now, how does an organization avoid emissions? You look at making your operations much more efficient. That way, you will be avoiding unwanted emissions. You will also be reducing your emissions because there's better efficiency that's happening in your operations. And then you replace any high carbon activity with lower carbon alternatives, right? Now, this is the basic hierarchy that goes into net zero strategizing. Now, apart from all of this, after all these initiatives have been done, where I'm talking about your first step is, like I said, avoiding emissions. The second step is you're reducing the emissions, where you're replacing high carbon activities with lower carbon alternatives and all of this. The final step, sometimes is where you have residual emissions. And these residual emissions is something that is very, very hard to abate and reduce further, especially in sectors like cement manufacturing or steel manufacturing, things like so. When there are very energy intensive processes involved, then there is a certain level of residual emissions that is bound to be there, and the only way you can perhaps mitigate that set of emissions, the residual emissions, is by the use of offsets, right? So I would always say offsets play a very, very key role, but it's also important to understand what kind of offsets the organization is going to be purchasing to, address their residual emissions. That's very key. And unless an organization has already taken the steps for reducing, avoiding, and then looking at offsets, it really doesn't make sense for an organization to go ahead and purchase offsets and then claim their net zero status, right? That's only carbon neutrality. So there's a significant difference when there are steps involved in the strategy for the organization to reduce their emissions and then supplement their residual emissions with offsets. That's net zero. But if an organization is just going to be purchasing offsets throughout to showcase that they are net zero, that's just carbon neutrality by itself. So offsets play a very critical role, especially like I said, with respect to these manufacturing sectors where there are certain activities or processes that cannot be fully reduced in terms of their emissions.
This sounds a little critical. You can answer it, you can avoid it, because this issue is happening now, and even a lot of politicians, people largely in US, raising a voice. They don't believe in the concept of net zero. They say it's not what it explains. They don't believe in it because whatever you claim, end of the day, you still go for the carbon emission, or somehow you are going into it rather than net zero. So a lot of people are not believing the concept. What about you? Do you go with them, or do you think no, it's not the case? Because they don't
See, net
believe with the word net zero.
Okay. So I think to answer this, I'm going to take a step back here. Meaning, when we say most of us don't agree with things when we don't understand it correctly, is what I've always felt. Net zero is a very scientific terminology. It's a science-based or a science-backed theory, I can say, that can be put into practice. Now, when we talk about net zero, like I started my talks, you need to look at reduction. Let me give you an analogy from everyday life. You take a bathtub, right? You've got a bathtub, you have water coming in through the tap, and there's a drain associated with that, with the bathtub, right? So the drain is basically the various ways in which you can absorb emissions in the atmosphere. You have various strategies that's associated with carbon sequestration and all of that. So let's keep that aside. Now the tap is what is bringing in water to your bathtub. That is basically the emissions that's being emitted from the various processes and operations that's happening across the world. Now, just because I'm saying net zero, it doesn't mean I'm going to have to completely stop the tap. People think sometimes that net zero means zero emissions. Net zero is a balance that you have to strike. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to close the tap immediately. That's not going to be possible immediately, right? But instead, you're going to look at reducing the inflow of that water, right? That's where I'm talking about reducing your emissions. You're going to be avoiding emissions. You strategize to make your operations much more efficient in the organization. All of these things. And but what happens is what do organizations do? They look at increasing the size of the drain so that no matter how much of water comes in, you're able to drain out all of that water. That's not what you do. That's your carbon offsets. Now, if you're only going to look at keeping
Hmm.
your bathtub intact by just increasing the size of the drain and ensuring the water doesn't overflow, that's not how it works. You need to first look at reducing the inflow. So you need to look at making your operations more efficient. Effication is one of the critical things. And like I said, you supplement your high carbon operations with lower carbon alternatives, things like that, and then you look at supplementing it. So unless you understand this net zero as a balance, people will still
Hmm.
be scared about the concept or will not agree with the concept of net zero. Like I said, it is a
Right.
balance that happens. Net zero necessarily does not mean zero emissions, but you're striking a balance between what gets emitted, what gets reduced, and ultimately what gets mitigated through the efforts of and supplementing it with offsets.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because believe me, it's the biggest debate going on in US. You know that very well since you're associated with it. It has been a serious issue going on. So I really wanted to hear it from experts. Change this perspective, because we cannot go back to zero. Something has been initiated. What we can do, we can make it as a break even, and that break even is the journey of net zero. If I'm saying it right, right?
Yes, so
So
you're right. Breaking even, that balance has to be there. You're absolutely right about that.
yeah. So don't go for the mind when we say about the word zero. It's not a zero. It's the equilibrium. It's the break even here. So how do these organizations identify and prioritize meaningful emission reduction before considering it as a compensation measure?
I think what I would say is everything starts with understanding the emissions inventory itself, right? Meaning you
Mm,
cannot prioritize reductions without first understanding the source and the magnitude of emissions of that particular of your organization. So once organizations quantify their footprint, that's like the first key step, the assessment. You assess yourself, you understand the quantity of energy you're using, you understand the quantity of fuel you're consuming, based on which you quantify your carbon footprint. That's the critical first step that has to be taken. And organizations
mm,
should focus on what we call as material emission sources, meaning the activities that will contribute the largest share of emissions itself. Now, for example, a commercial office building. In a commercial office building, you may find electricity consumption is the dominant source of emissions, right?
mm,
Now, whereas when you talk about a manufacturing company, it may be discovered that the process emissions are the largest contributor. Whereas if you're looking at a
yes.
construction company, we may find that the embodied carbon that comes from materials such as, say, cement or steel, that drives the footprint most, right? So this
Mm,
is why the
mm,
net zero
mm,
pathway will look different for each of these different entities. And which is why I often
mm,
recommend thinking about the emission reduction strategy like a financial investment. If you have a limited
mm,
budget, you don't invest where returns are smallest. You invest where your impact is going to be the greatest. And to understand where the impact is going to be greatest, you have to do a study. That's exactly what you'll need to do for your net zero also. You start by assessing
mm,
your emissions. You understand how the operations of your organization. Identify the sources of emissions for each of it. Like I said, depending on the typology that you belong to, depending on the sector that you belong to, your emissions inventory, your emissions footprint will be very, very different. So one size will not
mm,
fit all when we talk about strategy, right? Each entity will have to have, once it's identified, each entity will have its own way of strategizing. And that's
mm,
one of the meaningful ways in which you can prioritize on how you reduce your emissions. If we talk about it from the financial investment example I gave, similarly, organizations should prioritize the measures that provides the largest emissions reductions for them. This is what will support their operational and business objectives as well. So what I've also seen is the most
yeah.
successful organizations today, they don't try to do everything at once. They focus first on the a few actions that can eliminate the majority of their emissions, and then they build from there. So most often, if you see, when we complete an assessment for organizations to define their carbon footprint, and then you look at what could be the easiest strategies, it would be on the lines of electrification. So first things we will look at is
Mm,
reduce their dependency on fossil fuel, supplement all of their energy requirements through the help of renewable energies, that would ideally be the first step that a lot of organizations take. Again, that will depend on the type of organization it belongs to. Meaning, if I'm going to say, look at a manufacturing of steel or cement, that may not really work for that organization, right? So the first step, critical step, is to measure, understand their footprint, based on which they then prepare their decarbonization or their strategizing to get to net zero.
Yes. So when you're narrating it, there were questions in the back of my mind. So when we talk about footprints, it's for everybody in the world. It's for me, for you, for it. Sometimes, even though if we wanted to emit it, we cannot do it. We are living in that world. Somewhere we have to adjust to it. So what, instead of totally avoiding, that's not an accurate word, because we cannot avoid, but we can reduce it. That's what I believe in. So as an individual, we know there is a lot of apps like ecological footprints, how you are littering and everything you can track. As an individual, people can work on it. But at larger scale, what is happening, most of the MSMEs and small scale business industries, they get missed out from this net zero concept. They think this is only for the multinational companies and only for big industries. We are not a part of it. If you had to say something to the SMEs or any small organizations with very limited resources, where should they begin with this net zero journey?
One thing I can tell you here is, like you rightly said, most of these SMEs, they have a lack of resources when they want to get into this journey of net zero, right? But it's going to be important for them, because let's look at it from the global perspective. Every country across the world have pledged or given their commitments and said that they would go net zero by a specific timeline, by a particular year, which means every entity in that country will be expected to perform net zero. Now, if every entity is expected to perform net zero, this includes every organization in that, and most of the SMEs are part of the organizational network itself, right? Like we were discussing earlier, for a larger organization, an SME could be part of the supply chain. So if, as a large organization, I'm going to be quantifying my footprint and I want my supply chain to be very efficient in terms of their emissions, I'm going to be looking out for suppliers who have a fair understanding of their carbon footprint, who know the carbon footprint of the products that they're going to be selling to me. And that's where I think it's going to be critical for SMEs to play that role of see, even if you're not looking at immediate reductions, first start with quantification. Start with the first step of assessing yourself. Understand your footprint. Based on that, then look at strategizing to see what could give you the best. You won't be able to do everything on the first go, but it's always important to start somewhere, and I think taking that first critical step is going to be very, very important in the entire journey for your business itself.
I couldn't agree less, because I believe I have touched a very sensitive topic when it comes to SMEs. We can talk in another episode, because it's the biggest thing, how to do it, where to track, and what should be done. Because what, in my understanding, more SMEs don't even know what is this concept is about. Awareness is lagging. So I think we have to start it from there. Awareness. So definitely we will discuss about it in some other episode, hopefully. So my final question to you is, like, looking ahead to the 2030, as we all claim, and beyond, what gives you the hope about the future of this climate action? Because you come from a cross-functional collaboration. You have worked as an architect, you are a consultant, you have background related with the education and teaching. So to achieving this climate action coming from this cross-functional collaboration, how do you think personally, how do you make it happen? And in future, what's your scope, what's your vision?
I think, to start with, the period between now and 2030, right? This will be remembered as perhaps the decade when climate action moved from being just an ambition to implementation, is what I will say. Meaning, for the last 10 years, we've spent a lot of time setting targets, making commitments, and building awareness. By 2030, now the conversation will be much less about what organizations are promising, and it will be much more about what they have actually delivered by them. I foresee 5 major shifts happening. First one is where you could say, from being net zero targets to net zero transition plans itself. Today, many organizations have targets, But like I said, by 2030, stakeholders will be expecting to have detailed transitions and deliverables being seen associated with that targets set by organizations. And then the second thing I see is scope 3 will become the main battleground. That's where your SMEs is also going to play a very, very critical role. Most organizations, they've already started addressing their direct emissions and electricity related emissions. So the next frontier that will have to be tackled, that will start being tackled, is the supply chains. So for many companies, more than 70% of their emissions sits outside their direct scope. So there will be a lot of awareness and the associated implementation required with respect to scope 3. And then I think we will also be looking at where carbon will start becoming a business metric itself. Today, every executive, they sort of monitor revenue, they monitor cost, they monitor profit. But by 2030, carbon performance will increasingly become another key business metric, is what I feel. Meaning companies will start evaluating projects not only on their financial returns, but also on the carbon associated carbon footprint. And I think what I'll also say is maybe nature and carbon removal will gain greater importance going forward. And climate action will become a very competitiveness issue. So perhaps the most important shift, I would say, is that climate action will no longer be viewed as solely as an environmental responsibility. It will start increasingly becoming an economic and strategic necessity. It was all about making commitments, and the years leading to 2030 from here will all be about proving with the associated results.
That's beautiful, Ms. Sri Ranjani. First of all, thank you for sharing this expertise and reminding us like the sustainability is not a checklist, it is a certification or a community campaign. Everybody sees it like that, especially when we talk about informed decisions, embracing accountability and continuous improving the system. You left us something to think about for future. What are we going to do? What is the next step? I believe if every one of you who are listening and watching us, I would say please reach out to the Sri Ranjani. She's the right person. She will guide you in a very efficient and right. So again, to everyone who is listening, remember the journey to net zero isn't about perfection. It's about progress rooted in credibility and action. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the sustainability side, and also we have added Sri Ranjani's LinkedIn account, so you can also go and follow her, give your support. So it's about progress, I would say, rooted in credibility and action. And let's go ahead and if you love this episode, share it with your friends and family, with your companies, with your colleagues. We are also in YouTube. Leave a thoughtful comment, our conversations, which you are thinking, or any topic you want us to cover next. So until next time, I would always say, stay curious, keep creating impact one decision at a time. So thank you so much for having you with us here, Dr. Sri Ranjani. So we'll see you soon in another episode with another topic. Till then, stay tuned only on the sustainability side.
Feel the joy, let's unite on the sustainability side. Making waves, shining light.